quality standards that have been created. There's just one problem with that. If you work in an office, you're not working in a pressurized environment. Well, there may be a different kind of pressure, but, in terms of environment, it's not a pressurized environment. You're not working at altitude. And there are so many other factors within a small aircraft cabin because, for example, the cabin crew will use chemical toilet cleaners. There will be chemicals emitted perhaps off microwavable products or the holders that they're in. The seats are covered in fire retardants. The plastic surrounds are full of plasticizers, which over time erode and they give off organophosphates. And that's quite aside from anything else that you would receive in the air from the aircraft cabin. Now, the contrary will say, well, yes, there are fire retardants in offices and issues like that. But the simple fact of the matter is, to compare an operational aircraft at 30,000 feet, which has a cabin pressure at 8,000 feet, cannot be said to be operating in the same circumstances, in my view, as an office that's operating at 30 feet, shall we say. And I managed to get the one person I was talking to from Germany to agree with me that whilst the indoor air quality standards are interesting and to an extent persuasive, it is really only the start of the conversation. And, there needs to be perhaps a better set of comparators. So, for example, nuclear submarines, they operate at extreme pressure at extreme depth. It's the opposite way, if you like. Their air quality is absolutely vital. And so, we need to have a better conversation, in my view, around the world. And I can hear the aviation industry howling at me from here. But we need to have a better conversation around the world about the nature of air quality standards. Any air quality standard you create for aircraft has to be done in relation to the unique environment that it sits in.
You can follow me on Twitter at holiday_hut. The European Aviation Standards Agency has got 2 reports coming out in March about the quality of air in aircraft cabins. When the reports come out, and one of them is already late, I will bring the news to you. And now, Saga. Must admit, it's something I've not thought about going on a Saga holiday, but I'm getting very, very close to what's the minimum age, I guess you would say, about the company. I'm in my 50th year, so it won't be long before I'm on one of their trips. And you have your ideas about what people in the late 50s, 60s will do when they're travelling, such as going on a coach trip. Well, Saga have done a survey to find out what people are interested in and how much they're spending. As I mentioned earlier in the show, Saga is now 65. And Dr. Susan Barton's going to be talking about some of the findings of the survey and the holidays that Saga have to offer. Starting off with the survey, how much do we spend on our holidays?
Well, the survey, which was commissioned by Saga Travel as part of their 65th anniversary year, was that people are spending about 17% of their disposable income on holidays.
The sort of holidays people are spending their disposable income on, are they fly and flop, or are people looking for something more adventurous?
I think nowadays people are looking for something a little bit more adventurous. You think of people now that are within the market for Saga Travel products, so are a little bit older. They've probably been going on holidays for quite a long time, and it's become part of their routine. So they're looking for something a little bit more different.
When I was younger, I had an idea about how people of this age group will be travelling. And as I'm getting closer and closer to it, quicker and quicker, I'm thinking, no, people that don't travel like that at all. There's no coach trips. There are things such as sightseeing and taking part in activities. What sort of activities do people look to do when they're away?
Well, some people want to do things like camel riding, snorkeling, zip wire, some people would like to do as well. Hiking is quite popular. Mm-hmm. and also to see things that they've not seen before. So the Northern Lights was something which over a quarter of people said that they'd like to see if they could choose what to have on their bucket list of activities. Others want to go to China to see the Great Wall. So quite a lot of very varied things as well. Some of them are physical, some cultural.
I have trouble going up the stairs. I don't think I could do the Great Wall of China at the moment.
I don't think you have to climb over the wall. You can just look at it or walk along the top.
It's the walking that's the problem.
Okay.
You said that Saga is 65. What sort of holidays did it offer when it first opened?
Well, they had holidays which were UK-based. I think their first place was a small hotel in Folkestone that they used. They offer holidays abroad with flying and also cruises.
Are those sort of holidays available now?
Yes, all those things are still available. You can go on a cruise, a coach tour, or a flying holiday abroad.
What sort of changes has the tour company seen over the last 20 years, as you as a travel historian?
For me, I would say that the change in the last 20 years has been with people travelling further away. So 20 years ago, most people who holidayed abroad, often for the first time, remember, because travel by air is quite a modern phenomena. So people have only really been on package holidays in great numbers since the 70s and 80s, and that's the age group that are now coming up to be the target market for Saga. They're now able to go further away because we've got larger capacity aircraft, which brings fares lower to further distant destinations. And you can now fly to the other side of the world, Australia, New Zealand, China, Thailand, and you can do it in a day, whereas in the past it could have taken you many days or even weeks and months if you had to go by boat.
You mentioned the past there, and one of your books covers travel from the 1700s to 1914. What sort of travel was there in the 1700s?
Well, people could walk. I know that they actually did explore places which were seen as adventurous in those days, which were in Britain. So if you were living, say, in the Midlands, you could walk to Wales or ride there on a horse. And in Wales, it would be at that time completely different culture, a different language, different kinds of food, and it would be a very, very wild sort of environment. So, and even nowadays, you can explore unfamiliar places without going far away from your own home.
Back then, when people were exploring, were they people from all classes, or were the upper class doing it?
Well, in the past, the upper classes had their grand tours, which was part of the education, particularly for young men who went to places like Rome, classical sites in Italy, France, on their travels, which they had to pass through to get there. And it was seen as part of their education, and they brought back souvenirs, statues, portraits, paintings, and so on. But travelling around Britain was mostly done by people that had the time to do it. So again, they'd be sort of the leisured gentry, perhaps not so much the aristocracy unless they got a real taste for travel. But if you were riding, you had to be somebody that could afford a horse. If you were a woman, you'd need to have somebody that could go with you to accompany you. You would probably not want to go and travel on your own. Because remember, even having a horse meant that you would be quite well off, because not everybody could ride or have access to it. So all those things show the changes in technology which have facilitated people's travel. All those changes of the means of transport.
So the changes means that travel's it's easier for practically everybody now.
Yeah. Yes. So people can go just about anywhere in the world if they've got if they can save up and afford to do it. Whereas it would only have been a very small elite that could travel very far in the past. Even in the 1980s, it was only very wealthy people that could afford to go to America, and now it's quite common. Lots of people go.
You can keep up to date with travel news and leave me a message at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. Have changes from the 1950s and 1960s when we started travelling, have the changes from the companies always been positive, or is there stuff that travel companies today can learn from the travel companies of the past? Well,
in the 60s, as it became easier and cheaper to travel abroad, then there was a high demand in the market. Initially, lots of people wanted to go away, and more travel companies saw that as an opportunity. And so then there became an oversupply, and people cut corners. And at that time, companies became quite vulnerable financially, and so we start seeing the first travel companies that collapsed. And that's led to more security now, because if you choose a reputable company, it will be bonded through ABTA, so that even if you do choose a company that has the misfortune to go out of business, then you will be brought home and probably get your money back as well. So that's why it's important to look for the ABTA branding, because it safeguards your holiday, because of the problems that there had been in the past.
With a company like Saga, I guess that protecting the customers and looking after them is really important to them. So they've got all that in place.
Saga is a major travel company that's got it's not just the holidays, there's insurance and so on as well, which gives people protection when they travel.
We've talked about the past, but do you have a crystal ball? Can you see any travel changes coming over the next few years? Well,
I'm an historian, so I don't really look into the future, but we look at different trends. We can see that people travel to places that they can afford, and because they've got the time to do it. Mm-hmm. So the cost is always something which can change. We have currency fluctuations, so at the moment it's becoming more difficult to go to Europe because of the pound devaluing against the euro and also against the dollar, but those things change all the time. Also, people perhaps have been to lots of places abroad. Sometimes they might want to have more than one holiday, and so there's also a rise in demand for places perhaps not so far away in Britain as well. So people are visiting new places all the time.
So it's as far as their money will allow. That's what's happening.
And their time.
Mm-hmm. How can we find out more about Saga, the holidays they offer, and how can we find out more about your books?
If you want to look at Saga, you can easily Google it if you've got a computer. Their website address is travel.saga.co.uk. And you can also, if you wish to find out more about me, if you put in Susan Barton Travel or Susan Barton Tourism, then hopefully you'll be able to find something of mine. So books that are easily available is one on travel and tourism in Switzerland, which is called Healthy Living in the Alps, 1860 to 1914. And there's also one Working Class Organisations and Popular Tourism, 1840 to 1970. And another one which is probably you'd have to get through the library because it's quite a 4-volume set, is Travel and Tourism in Britain.
I told you there was a lot on this week's show. All the websites that I mentioned today will be found at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. Just look for the 19th of January show posting. There's also a blog on johnguinn.me about the quality of air in the aircraft cabin. It's got some stories about some instances in the recent past which you might be interested in. And I do hope you can join me next time on the Travel Show with John Guinn on ukhealthradio.com, where every week I'm checking it out before you check in.